The black SUV pulled into the circular driveway of the penthouse building as the morning sun streaked gold across the windshield. From the back seat, a little girl peeked at the driver's eyes in the mirror. "You remind me of someone," she whispered. He simply smiled, not saying a word. Minutes later, the CEO walked out in heels sharp enough to cut glass, then stopped cold. Her eyes locked on the man in the front seat. Her lips parted. It couldn't be. Before we dive in, drop a comment with where you're watching from, and don't forget to hit subscribe for more videos like this. Let's begin. The morning buzzed in downtown Atlanta as cars zipped past the marble steps of Monarch Tower. Lila Monroe, sharp-suited CEO of Monroe Dynamics, checked her Rolex inside. Her 6-year-old daughter, Ava, needed a new driver, someone low-key, responsible, and trustworthy. She didn't want flashy. She didn't want charming. Just safe. What she got was Jack Callahan. He pulled up in an older Lincoln, clean but worn. His jaw was strong, but his eyes carried something gentler. Ava jumped in, giggling at the bubble gum he handed her like it was a secret. Lila barely looked at him when she gave instructions. "No talking. Be on time. That's all." Jack nodded. "Yes, ma'am." But what Lila didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that 12 years ago, she pulled a bleeding man from a car wreck outside Houston during a storm. That man had vanished before she learned his name, and now he was back. Ava had only been riding with Jack for 3 days, but she already asked for him by name. "Mommy, he plays my favorite music," she chirped, "and he lets me guess which bridge will go under first." Lila barely looked up from her tablet. "He's a driver, sweetheart, not a friend." But that afternoon, as Lila stepped outside for her usual 4:15 p.m. pickup, she paused. Jack stood outside the car with the door open, a calm presence among honking taxis and a sea of busy elbows. There was something about the way he moved, so still, so intentional. Not like a man who drove for money. More like someone who had once walked away from chaos and was now doing everything he could to protect peace. Lila's eyes caught his as she slid into the back seat, and for the briefest second, her breath caught in her throat. Where had she seen those eyes? Where? Ava waved her drawing from school, a crayon rocket ship with little stick figures. "That's you, Mr. Jack," she beamed. "You're my spaceship driver." He smiled. "Then we better lift off safely, Commander." Even Lila cracked a small smile before catching herself. She hated that comfort. She spent too long building a world where men couldn't hurt her anymore. And here was one slowly earning her daughter's trust, like it was the most natural thing in the world. That evening, Jack returned to his modest apartment, a place filled with quiet shadows, framed photos, and memories wrapped in silence. He poured himself a glass of water, sat at the table, and stared at the picture taped to the inside of the cupboard. A newspaper clipping from 2013. Local woman pulls injured man from burning SUV. Leaves before paramedics arrive. He'd kept it for 12 years. Kept her in his mind. He hadn't known her name until a week ago. But when the agency said the client was Lila Monroe, something inside him shifted. "Life's strange," he whispered. "She saved me once. Now I'll make sure nothing ever touches her daughter." Meanwhile, across the city in her high-rise condo, Lila opened a dusty photo album from her closet. She hadn't done that in years. Page after page flipped past, and then, there it was. That night. The storm. The crash. Her coat soaked in blood and rain. Her shaking hands pulling the unconscious man free, begging him to wake up. She stared at the old Polaroid she'd taken before the ambulance arrived. A close-up of the man's face, right before he opened his eyes. Her hands trembled now. Was it possible? No, it couldn't be. But deep inside her chest, something whispered, "It is." Rain tapped softly against the windows of the Monroe Dynamics building the next morning, but the mood inside was all thunder. "Where's the Davidson proposal?" Lila barked as she marched down the hallway. "I needed that 30 minutes ago." Her assistant nearly tripped over herself. "Right here, ma'am. Just waiting on." "I don't wait," Lila snapped, snatching the folder from her hands. She wasn't cruel by nature. But every day she built this empire, every battle she fought to keep it intact, hardened her more than the one before. People only saw the steel, never the scars, never the burned-out girl from Houston who had once driven a dented Civic and believed the world could be soft. She locked herself in her office and breathed out slowly. Then her phone buzzed. "Ava, 3:16 p.m. Mr. Jack says he can do the puzzle in under 30 seconds. I bet he cheats, grinning, squinting face. Lila stared at the text. For a moment, the corners of her lips twitched. Another buzz. Jack Callahan. Just letting you know I picked Ava up. She asked if we could stop for apple juice. I said no sugar until homework is done. Hope that's okay. She started typing. That's fine. Thanks. Then deleted it. Then typed again. Thanks. And tell her she's right. You probably do cheat. She hit send. A second later, 3 dots appeared. Jack guilty, but only because she's smarter than me. Lila set the phone down and looked out over the city. There was something dangerous about how easy this felt. How he handled Ava. How naturally he respected boundaries and yet made her daughter laugh like she hadn't in months. Meanwhile, across town, Ava sat cross-legged on Jack's couch. Her mother was running late. Again. He handed her a grilled cheese. Crust cut off, extra crispy. Just the way she liked it. You sure you don't want anything fancier? He teased. I've got peanut butter with no jelly and some slightly expired spaghetti sauce. She giggled. No, thank you. He grinned. But when he turned to the sink, his smile faded. His eyes landed on the small wooden box resting on the top shelf of his cabinet. He hadn't touched it in years. Inside were the dog tags he hadn't worn since the explosion. One of them was scorched, the chain still twisted from the heat. He ran his thumb along the edges. Still here, he muttered. Thanks to her. Later that night, after dropping Ava off, Jack pulled up outside a tiny VA support center tucked behind a gas station. Inside, a half-dozen vets sat in folding chairs, sipping lukewarm coffee and pretending not to hurt. He sat quietly in the back, just to listen. But when a young man began to share about the nightmares, Jack's eyes drifted to the floor. He remembered what it felt like to wake up choking on smoke. What it felt like to see a stranger's hand reach through flames. He remembered a woman's voice trembling through the chaos. Don't you dare die on me. Across the city, Lila stood in her kitchen in a silk robe, stirring tea she wouldn't drink. She hadn't stopped thinking about that old photograph, and now her mind was turning over memories she had buried for years. That night, the wreck, the rain, the soldier. She remembered grabbing a flannel blanket from her trunk and wrapping it around his bloodied chest. She remembered him whispering something, voice so hoarse she barely heard. Tell her thank you. But there had been no her. Had he meant someone else? Or had he meant her future? She stared out the window. A flicker of truth rising through the fog of her mind like a sunbeam through storm clouds. Jack wasn't just familiar. He was the reason she'd learned what courage really meant. And now, he was driving her daughter home. 3 weeks passed. 3 weeks of Jack pulling up like clockwork in that old Lincoln. The engine always purring low. The door always open before Lila or Ava even touched the handle. 3 weeks of Ava smiling more, asking questions again, sleeping without night lights. Her drawings now had stick figures holding hands. And 3 weeks of Lila Monroe, CEO, single mother, known across boardrooms for her spine of ice, glancing out her office window 15 minutes before Ava's pickup time, just to make sure that familiar car was already there. She told herself it was just professionalism, due diligence, nothing more. But that lie frayed a little more each time Jack texted her something small. Ava left her scarf. Or she asked if you still have her purple socks from last winter. Each message was short, respectful, but warm. And it had been years since anyone in her life spoke to her that way, without needing something in return. That Friday, the school held a parent breakfast. Lila hated those. She hated the subtle smirks from other mothers. The questions cloaked in compliments. Oh, you must be Ava's nanny? Wait, you're her mom. Or worse, where's her father? She was late. Ava had begged her to come just for muffins and orange juice, so she did. But when she got to the cafeteria, she froze just inside the door. At the far table, surrounded by laughing kids, was Jack, sitting cross-legged on the floor beside Ava's chair, carefully taping a paper crown back together. She was wearing it upside down and giggling hysterically. A few other parents had raised eyebrows. One whispered something behind her coffee cup, but Lila saw something they didn't. She saw her daughter happy. Ava waved furiously when she spotted her. Mommy, we saved you the strawberry muffin. Jack stood immediately, dusted off his jeans, and gave a respectful nod. I told her you were probably stuck in a board meeting, he said. She said you were probably out saving the world. Lila blinked, caught off guard. I'm not saving anything. You did once, he said softly. Her breath caught. Jack realized at the moment it left his lips. He hadn't meant to say it. Not yet. But it hung there in the space between them. What do you mean? Lila asked, voice barely above a whisper. Jack stepped back, smiled gently. Nothing. Just a joke. But she saw the flicker in his eyes. The same flicker she'd seen that night so long ago, through the smoke and rain, when a soldier on the ground opened his eyes and whispered, "Tell her thank you." Later that day, she sat in her office, the photo of the man from that night now on her desk. It was old, water-stained, his face bruised and barely visible. But the eyes. She enlarged the photo on her phone, zoomed in, tilted her screen toward the afternoon light. Same shape, same sadness, same fire. Her chest ached as she leaned back in her chair. Could it really be him? If it was, why wouldn't he say something? That night, unable to sleep, Lila poured herself a glass of wine and opened her laptop. She dug through archives, tried to pull up local news articles from that year. Unidentified soldier rescued by civilian. Army refuses to disclose soldier's identity due to sealed records. Civilian disappeared before paramedics arrived. She read until 2:43 a.m., eyes burning, fingers numb. And then she found it. A photo, taken in the hospital. Blurry, low resolution, but unmistakably him. Next to it, officials say the soldier refused interviews. Said only, "She gave me back my life. Tell her I'll return the favor someday." Lila sat frozen. Her hand moved her chest. He remembered. He knew. And all this time, he had stayed silent, driving her daughter to school, carrying her backpack when no one asked, wiping orange juice from her cheek, and taping together crowns. A man who could have exposed her kindness to the world, but instead chose to repay it quietly. The next morning, Lila walked out to the car with purpose. Jack stood by the door, hands behind his back as always. But she didn't get in. "Jack," she said. He turned, her eyes filled with something unspoken. 12 years ago. Houston. Rain. Fire. An SUV on the side of the freeway. He inhaled, sharply, like the wind had been knocked out of him. "I pulled a man out of that wreck," she said. He never said his name. Silence. Then, Jack stepped closer, and with that same calm, respectful voice, he whispered, "You never asked." Her eyes welled. She tried to speak, but he continued, "I was broken. I shouldn't have made it. I didn't want to, until you reached through the flames." He looked down at the ground. "I never forgot your face, or your voice, but I knew you didn't want to be found. So I didn't come back, until Ava." Lila's voice cracked. "Why now?" "Because I saw your name on the driving assignment list. I thought, maybe I could finally give something back." The air between them was heavy with truth. For the first time in years, Lila Monroe had nothing to say. Not because she didn't have words, but because none of them were big enough to carry the weight of what this moment meant. "You never once asked for anything," she whispered, her voice trembling more than she wanted. "Not even a thank you." Jack shook his head. "I wasn't owed one. I owed you." Before she could respond, Ava came bouncing out the door, lunchbox in hand, her jacket inside out and shoes untied. "Ready, Mr. Jack," she sang. He smiled, regaining his usual calm. "Yes, Commander." Lila looked at him as Ava jumped into the back seat. He had risked his life for hers once. And now, he was driving her child to school, making her laugh, keeping her safe, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. The kindest thing he had done wasn't saving her that night. It was staying silent all these years. But peace never stays long. The next day, while Lila was deep in meetings, her security officer entered the boardroom and handed her a sealed folder. His expression was grim. "Background on the driver you asked us to double-check." Lila froze. She hadn't asked for that. Someone else had. Inside the folder were several pages. Jack's military service, discharge report, physical scars, classified missions, even a sealed psychiatric evaluation. Pages full of things he'd never spoken of, things he likely never would. And stapled on the back, a photo of Jack outside a VA center. Another of him helping Ava from the car. There was a red sticky note on the top. "He's too close. You're exposed. Handle it." Her heart dropped. She knew immediately where it came from. From inside the company. People who didn't like seeing her trust anyone outside their circle of polished shoes and manicured hands. People who viewed Jack as lesser. People who had no idea this man had once dragged her limp body through broken glass with a punctured lung just to get her safety. Her jaw clenched. No, not on her watch. She tossed the folder back at the officer. Burn that. And anyone who asks about Jack Callahan again will be escorted from the building. That evening, Lila met Jack on the curb. Before he could open the car door, she placed a hand on his chest, over the spot where she knew the burn scar lay underneath. They're watching you, she said. Some people on my board think I've let you get too close. Jack's expression didn't flinch. I can back off, he said quietly. Quit, if it protects you and Ava. No, she cut in. I'm not losing the only person she trusts, and the only man I do. The words left her mouth before she realized how much she meant them. Jack looked at her, really looked, and something passed between them, something ancient and warm and quiet. Then he opened the car door. Then let's keep driving. But across the city, someone else had opened the same file Lila had burned. A man in a gray suit sat in a private office, drumming his fingers along the edge of a photo. Jack Callahan, honorable discharge, suspected in an unauthorized mission, disappeared for 5 years. He flipped the folder shut, then dialed a number. I want eyes on that man. Every day, every hour. If he's back in the open, we may have a problem. Meanwhile, Jack sat alone in his apartment, that same burned dog tag resting in his hand. The world he had left behind, the world that had nearly killed him, was knocking again. And this time, it might come for Lila and Ava. He looked down at a drawing Ava had made for him. It was a stick figure in a red cape. You're my hero, she had written in purple crayon. His throat tightened. I'll protect her, he whispered, no matter what. It began with a black van parked outside Jack's apartment. He noticed it immediately. Military-grade tires. No plates. Windows too dark. It stayed just long enough to not be illegal. Then it was gone. Then came the blocked calls on his burner phone. No voice on the other end. Just silence. As if someone was reminding him, we know where you are. He didn't tell Lila. He didn't want to scare her. He didn't want to bring the past to her front door. But Jack knew what this meant. They found him. That same night, while Jack sat in the dark with a .45 resting on the table in front of him, Lila was hosting a corporate dinner at a luxury hotel. High ceilings, glass chandeliers, executives talking mergers and stock options over lamb chops. But she wasn't listening. She was staring at the phone in her purse, waiting for Ava's goodnight message, waiting for Jack to say she fell asleep before brushing her teeth again. But the text never came. At 9:07 p.m., her phone buzzed. Jack Callahan, Ava's fine, but we need to talk. In person. Alone. Her heart skipped. Something was wrong. She arrived at his apartment by 9:40. He was waiting in the hallway, hands in his jacket, eyes scanning every shadow. This isn't about you, he said quietly. It's about something I ran from years ago. Something that doesn't want me found. He opened the door, laid the file down on the table. Inside, photos, coordinates, a flash drive. Lila's hands trembled as she picked up the drive. What is this? Jack's jaw tightened. Proof that the company I once worked for was doing things they shouldn't have. Things that got civilians hurt. Things I spoke out against. He pointed to one photo. This man, he's still operating. Private contracts. Quiet jobs. Cleans up after the powerful. Lila stared at the photo. The man in it was shaking hands with someone from her board of directors. Her blood turned to ice. They're funding this. Jack nodded. We're covering for it. She took a step back. My God. Jack stepped closer. You're not safe, Lila. Ava's not safe. If they think you know. I didn't know, she snapped. You think I put my child anywhere near men like that? I know, he said softly. That's why I'm going to end it. That night, Jack didn't sleep. He packed a bag, taped the burner phone under Ava's car seat, hid a GPS tracker in her lunchbox. Every instinct he had honed as a soldier, every ghost he thought he buried, came roaring back. But the difference this time? He had something worth protecting. Not orders. Not flags. Not wars. A little girl who laughed when she blew chocolate milk through a straw, and a woman who once pulled him out of fire with her bare hands. 2 days later, Lila pulled up to her daughter's school and saw the van. Not Jack's. The black van. Parked across the street. The same one Jack described. She didn't wait. She turned the car around and hit speed dial. Jack, it's here. The van. His voice came instantly. Take the side road. Park at Green and Haven. I'll find you. Lila didn't hesitate. She tore down the street, adrenaline surging. Ava in the back seat, confused but calm. Mommy? Why are we racing? We're playing hide and seek, baby, she whispered. We're going to win. Jack met them behind an old hardware store. Threw her car seat into his own. Ava, sensing something big, stayed quiet and held his hand tight. Then Lila turned to him. I'm not running, she said. Not again. You said you'd end it? Fine, but I'm coming with you. Jack looked at her like she was the craziest woman he'd ever seen, but also the bravest. He nodded once. Then we ended together. They drove through the night, headlights slicing the darkness as silence stretched between them. Jack had mapped the location in his mind 100 times. An off-grid estate 20 minutes outside the city, hidden by security walls, fake corporate names, and fear. It was where the man in the photo lived. The one shaking hands with Lila's board member. The one who nearly killed him. Jack gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. Every memory he had locked away, the mission gone wrong, the lives lost, the betrayal, was surging back like a tide he could no longer stop. And beside him sat Lila, the only woman who ever broke through his armor. Silent, focused, ready. You're not coming in, Jack finally said, eyes still on the road. Yes, I am, she replied without hesitation. It's not safe. I don't care. He looked at her, really looked. Not as a CEO, not as the woman who saved his life, but as a mother, a protector, a fighter. And for the first time, he didn't feel alone. They reached the estate just after 2 a.m. Lila used her corporate clearance to get past the first gate. No questions asked. Her last name still carried weight, even if she didn't realize who had been using it. Beyond the hedge-lined driveway, security cameras blinked red. Jack pulled out the flash drive. Once this gets out, they'll burn everything to the ground, including us. Lila stared at the house ahead, its lights glowing warm like nothing inside could ever be sinister. How many people know? Enough to make it ugly. Not enough to stop them. She took the flash drive from him. Then let's give it to the ones who can. Inside, they didn't knock. They walked through the marble foyer like they belonged, because in a way, they did. And there he was, Vincent Garrison, the man in the photo, hair silvered with age, a cane at his side, and a cruel smile on his face. Well, the dead man walks. Jack stepped in front of Lila. You've been watching me. I own you, Garrison said coldly. You were a tool, and when tools start digging in dirt they shouldn't, they get buried. He motioned toward a hidden door. 2 men appeared, armed, quiet, trained. Lila stiffened, but Jack, he didn't flinch. I'm not the one who'll be buried, he said, and suddenly he moved. 2 seconds. That's all it took. Jack had disarmed one and slammed the other into the wall with chair leg. The entire room exploded into chaos. Garrison lunged toward the fireplace mantel, toward a hidden gun, but Lila was faster. She reached it first. She didn't point it at him. She pointed it at the folder on the table. Burn it, she said. What? She lit a match. I'm not here to play your game, she said through gritted teeth. I'm here to end it. He hesitated. And in that moment, Jack grabbed the remaining flash drives from the shelf. You exposed my men, Garrison growled. You think the world cares about your justice? I don't care about the world, Jack said. I care about Ava. He pulled Lila behind him and back toward the door. We're done here. They made it out just as dawn crept over the horizon. Jack's chest heaved, but not from fear, from release. He handed the drive to a trusted journalist hours later, one he'd once saved in a Middle East evacuation, a man who owed him more than he could repay. The headline would break in the morning. Whistleblower exposes covert operation tied to corporate leaders. Justice finally in motion. But Jack didn't wait for credit. He never did. Later that day, Jack walked Ava to her classroom like usual. No fanfare, no drama, just a quiet smile and a wave goodbye. He turned to leave, but Lila was waiting there in the hallway, still in her suit, still unreadable. I should have asked her name that night, she said softly. He looked down. Maybe you weren't supposed to. She stepped closer. But now I want to know everything. What you love, what you dream, what scares you, and what you want from me. He blinked. Why now? Her voice broke just enough to be real. Because you don't just drive my daughter. You carry her. Like she's yours. She took a breath. And I think, maybe you carry me too. Jack didn't answer. He didn't have to. He just took her hand, held it gently, and didn't let go. 1 week later, the headlines still burned across every news channel. Whistleblower exposes deep military corporate scandal. Key figures resign overnight. Former soldier saves CEO's daughter while unraveling national cover-up. Meet Jack Callahan, the hero who never spoke. But Jack didn't watch the news. He spent his mornings making Ava pancakes shaped like stars. He walked her to school with her tiny hand gripping his, telling knock-knock jokes that made no sense but made her laugh anyway. And Lila? She found herself lingering by the window each morning, coffee cooling in her hands, listening to the sound of her daughter laughing down the hall. For the first time in years, the silence in her penthouse felt safe. Not hollow, not lonely, just calm. But healing didn't come without scars. At a press event, a reporter cornered Lila. Why would a CEO like you let a former soldier, someone with a sealed record, around your daughter? The question was laced with judgment, with assumption. But Lila only smiled. Because I trust him more than I trust the people who sit in glass towers pretending they care, she said. That man held my child's hand through fear. He saved my life once. And now, he saves hers every day just by being in it. The video went viral overnight. And Jack, he didn't even know. That weekend, they took Ava to the countryside. No schedules, no phones, just one cabin, a stack of firewood, and a picnic basket. Ava played by the creek with a stick she insisted was a wizard wand. Jack taught her how to skip stones. Lila watched them from the porch, arms wrapped around a mug of tea, her heart fuller than she'd ever known. Later that evening, as the sky turned orange and Ava slept beneath a blanket of stars, Jack sat beside Lila, legs stretched out on the porch steps. He was quiet, not because he didn't want to speak, but because everything he needed was already here. Still, Lila broke the silence. What now? He looked at her. Now, he said, we live. She turned her head. That's simple. Jack nodded. It always was. The next day, they stopped at a gas station on the way home. Jack waited outside while Lila paid. Ava had gone inside to pick out candy. As Jack leaned against the car, a man approached him. Rough clothes, dirty shoes, a face worn from years on the street. Hey man, I don't mean to bother you, the man said, his voice cracking. I haven't eaten in 2 days. You got anything to spare? Jack didn't hesitate. He handed the man a $20 bill, then opened the car and pulled out a bag with water, trail mix, and a folded hoodie. Here, he said. It's clean. It's warm. The man's eyes welled. God bless you. Jack nodded once. Just pay it forward. The man walked away. But what Jack didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that a young girl filming a kindness challenge on her phone had caught it all. The video would go viral. Again. But none of it mattered to Jack. He wasn't kind for cameras. He was kind because someone once was kind to him. That night, back in the city, Ava ran into the living room holding a piece of paper. It was a drawing, 3 stick figures. One tall, with a cape. One in high heels. One small, holding both their hands. She pointed. That's you, she told Jack. And that's Mommy. And that's me. He smiled. You made us superheroes. She shook her head. Nope. You're not superheroes. You're just mine. 3 months had passed, and the world had begun to move on. The scandal Jack exposed had shifted headlines, closed contracts, triggered resignations. But in the cycle of noise and media, attention moved faster than justice. The corporations protected themselves. The guilty men were shuffled to private islands and paid silence. But Jack didn't care about the headlines. He only cared about one small hand that tugged at his sleeve every morning asking for apple juice, and one woman who now looked at him like he was home. Still, there was one thread left untied. One name. One man. The only one Jack had never faced. Colonel Theodore Beck. The man who ordered the mission. Who covered the civilian casualties. Who forged the signature on Jack's discharge. And who now sat on the advisory board of Monroe Dynamics. It started with a board meeting. A regular quarterly check-in. Nothing out of the ordinary. Until Lila opened her presentation and spotted him. Back row. Gray hair. Sharp blue eyes like frost. Hands clasped. Face expressionless. Her throat dried. Jack's words echoed in her mind. The man who signed it all away was higher than anyone else. He's not just dirty. He owns the dirt. She continued the presentation. But her heart raced with every word. When it ended, She walked straight past the board members. Straight toward him. "Colonel Beck," she said coolly. "Ms. Monroe." He stood, smiling like a grandfather. "Brilliant work as always. Ava must be proud." She narrowed her eyes. "You know her name?" "I know all your names," he said. "Especially the ones you try to protect." She didn't respond. She didn't blink. He leaned in closer. "You're brave. But brave people break too." She walked away, silent, but her hands shook all the way to the elevator. That night, Jack saw it in her eyes the second she stepped into the apartment. He said nothing, just waited. She finally spoke, voice low. "He's on the board. He's inside the company." Still, Jack didn't flinch. "Then we take him out." Lila blinked. "Legally, you mean?" But Jack didn't answer. His silence was the answer. Lila stepped toward him. "No, you're not disappearing again. You're not vanishing into the shadows while we stay behind wondering if you're alive." Jack looked at her then. Not like a soldier, not like a bodyguard, not even like a man in love. Like a father. "I won't let him get near Ava." Lila didn't look away. "Then we fight smart. Not dirty. We do this together." He stared for a long moment, then nodded. The plan began the next day. Lila started by requesting full financial audits of the advisory board. Nothing unusual, just standard corporate compliance. But the signal was clear. I'm watching. At the same time, Jack returned to the VA. Not as a patient, as a man ready to testify. He met with a retired captain who owed him his life. "Do you remember the Anderson Ridge op?" Jack asked. The man's face paled. "I still dream about it." "Would you say it under oath?" He hesitated, then nodded. "Yes." Meanwhile, Ava drew a family portrait at school. A new one. No stick figures this time. She asked her teacher for skin-tone crayons. She worked on it all week, then brought it home and handed it to Jack with both hands. "I made us better." The picture showed a man holding a little girl on his shoulders, and beside them, a woman holding his hand. She'd drawn them smiling. Big, open, fearless smiles. Jack's throat closed. "Do you think we're happy?" he asked her gently. Ava looked at him like it was the dumbest question in the world. "We are." Then came the final move. Lila scheduled an emergency board meeting, under executive authority. No press, no leaks, only truth. She presented the original mission documents Jack had dug up, paired with signed statements from 3 former soldiers, all of whom identified Colonel Beck as the one who signed the orders. She paused, then held up a second flash drive. "This contains a recording," she said, "one that includes classified audio logs of the incident, and a voice admitting to covering up civilian deaths. It was retrieved from military archives by a whistleblower I now employ." Silence. Then she leaned forward. "I'm giving every board member a choice. Step down with a severance package, or stay and be publicly associated with this." One by one, chairs slid back. Hands were shaken. Silence swallowed the room. Only Beck remained. "You can't prove that voice is mine," he hissed. "I don't need to," Lila said, "because I don't care if you go to jail." She turned. "I just care that you never sit in this building again." Security escorted him out, and as he passed Jack waiting in the lobby, he paused. "You're lucky, soldier. Most men like you don't get second lives." Jack looked him dead in the eyes. "That's because most men like me don't get saved by women like her." That night, back at the apartment, Lila stood on the balcony as city lights blinked below. Jack stepped out quietly, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. She leaned into him. "You ended it." "No," he said. "We did." She looked at him. "You think we'll ever be normal?" He smiled. "Normal's overrated." She nodded slowly, resting her head against his chest. "But maybe happy is enough." And Jack, for the first time in a lifetime of battles, he finally believed her. 3 months later, no one mentioned Colonel Beck again. His name was erased from the Monroe Dynamics website. His emails were scrubbed. His influence dissolved. The world had quietly moved on. But something deeper had shifted inside Jack. For years, he'd lived like a man passing through. Like he didn't deserve permanence. Like he didn't deserve to stay. He had floated from town to town, job to job, carrying the weight of his past like a ghost tethered to his back. But now, when he opened his eyes each morning, he heard the soft patter of Ava's socks on the hardwood floor before she climbed into bed beside him. Now he found Lila's teacup next to his coffee mug on the counter, always warm. Now he saw his toothbrush next to hers. And slowly, he began to believe maybe this was home. Lila changed too. The woman who wants to find herself by deals, deadlines, and data started walking Ava to school with Jack on Tuesdays. She now left meetings early to eat lunch on park benches. She started keeping a gratitude journal. She had learned to let her walls fall, not because she was weak, but because someone had finally taught her what it meant to feel safe, to be seen, to breathe. One crisp Saturday morning, Ava came into the living room holding a flyer from her school. "Career day," she beamed. "You have to come, Mr. Jack." Jack looked up from the couch, one eyebrow raised. "Me? Yes. My friend Emma's dad builds rockets. And Brian's mom is a lawyer. You're the most interesting." Lila smirked, sipping her coffee. "What are you going to say? That you used to fight wars, and now you braid hair in the mornings?" He chuckled. "Basically." But when career day arrived, Jack stood in front of 23rd graders with nothing but a whiteboard in his quiet presence. "I used to be a soldier," he said calmly. "I traveled the world, and I did hard things. But none of them made me proud like this." He pointed to Ava in the front row, sitting cross-legged, eyes wide, being her driver, and her friend, and her family. A few teachers teared up. Lila did too. Later that night, as Ava slept with one hand hanging off the bed, Jack stepped onto the balcony and found Lila waiting for him. She wore one of his flannel shirts now, claimed it as hers. "You're getting famous," she teased. "Mrs. Butler asked if you give driving lessons." He grinned. "Only to people under 4 feet tall." They stood in silence, watching the lights of the city pulse like stars below them. Then Lila turned, her voice suddenly trembling. "I've been thinking about something." He waited. "I don't want to just share a house," she said. "I want to share a name." Jack blinked. "You mean, I don't need a wedding, or a ring, or an announcement. I just want you here, every day, for real. No exits, no escape plans." Jack's eyes didn't fill immediately, but his soul cracked open. He pulled her in slowly, pressed his forehead to hers. "I wanted to stay since the moment she called me hero." 1 year later, the headlines had faded, but Jack hadn't. He became Ava's official guardian, listed beside Lila on every school form. He volunteered at the VA twice a month, helping other soldiers find stability. And every Friday night, he made homemade mac and cheese while Lila danced with Ava in the kitchen to old 90s music. Their life wasn't flashy. It wasn't loud. It was soft, solid, full. Then came a snowy December evening. They stood in the living room, trimming the tree. Ava placed the angel at the top while Jack steadied her on his shoulders. Then she jumped down, held out a tiny wrap box, and handed it to Jack. "Open it." Inside was a key. Not to a car, not to a locker, but to a room in the house that had always stayed locked. Lila smiled. "I want you to have your space. I know you keep things to yourself. So I made you an office, or a memory room, or a bunker, if Ava brings glitter inside again." He opened the door that night, and inside, every part of his life was there. Photos Lila had collected, his medals, that scorched dog tag, a framed drawing from Ava, and on the desk, the crumpled newspaper clipping from 12 years ago. "Local woman pulls stranger from fire." A note beneath it read, "Thank you for letting me find you, Lila." Jack stood in that room for over an hour. He didn't cry, but he did something he hadn't done in years. He prayed, not for forgiveness, not for strength, just for time. Time to keep loving them. Time to keep showing up. Time to keep being the man they believed he already was. On New Year's Eve, as fireworks painted the sky, Jack lifted Ava in his arms. She whispered, "You know what my wish is for next year?" He leaned down. "What?" "I don't want anything to change." And for once, Jack had nothing to add, because that stillness, that joy, that belonging was all he ever wanted. And finally, he had it.